Ferrari driver Felipe Massa was airlifted to hospital.
This is a life-threatening accident.
We don't really know whether he's going to make it.
It's been horrendous, to be honest. Very, very, very difficult time.
For me, the team, like in terms of operations, had taken another little notch upwards from 2008. He'd taken another little notch upwards from 2008. He was consistently performing really well. And I think that was a race definitely which probably suited the car. And I thought that we would probably get a decent qualifying out of it. You know, even though the car was awful in real terms, he was always inside like the top 10 in qualifying. He just started the lap. He's going up the hill to turn 5. And I see him like start to slow down. It's not an accident. He's kind of like slowing down. And I'm like, oh, fuck, the engine's broken or gearbox broken. It's a classic, like the car just like coming to a stop, but a little bit faster. So I'm looking, and as he's slowing down, I jump on the radio and go, oh, mate, like, what's happened? There's no response. So then I immediately think, oh, he's pissed off. He doesn't want to talk. Like, he's in the middle of qualifying, gearbox is broke, engine's broke, something like that, right? Doesn't want to talk. And then I kind of see him, like, come to an abrupt halt. Like, you know, the line goes down. So then I'm like, oh, he's crashed. Actually, he wasn't just slowing the car down. Now he's crashed. But he's kind of slowing down. Then he crashes. I'm like, all right, this is weird. So I was like, what happened? No response. Then I'm asking the guys back in the garage. I'm saying, hang on, what's happened here? And one of them says to me, well, going up the hill, he's kind of like started to press the brake and started to press the accelerator at the same time. But he's like hard down on the brake and the accelerator. I'm like, oh, this is weird, right? And now, like, this is a completely new situation. You're not understanding anything. And then it shows the in-car camera of him. It flashes to that. Still haven't heard from him. And it shows the in-car camera. And he's got his hands on the wheel, right? He's got his hands on the wheel, but he starts to veer over to the left-hand side of the road. Then he goes over the curbs. Then he goes over, from one side of the track to the other, bounces across the gravel into the tyre wall. I'm like, he's just driven it into the wall, right? His hands are still on the wheel, which is really weird to watch anyway. When you see a driver go into the wall, you'll always see at the very last minute, they'll take the hands off. So we're still like in this state where we've got no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
It's total confusion, right? Confusion from the garage, confusion from me. Nobody knows what's going on. And then at that point, his radio opens. And there was this like awful, like guttural moaning, you know what I mean? Somebody in a lot of pain, like a lot of pain.
And has he had to press the button for the radio to come open at that point?
I don't know. I don't think he's in any fit state. I think he's been fumbling round. He's come to, he's been fumbling round, and somehow he's just out of instinct has pressed that button and he's opened it. He hasn't saying anything. There's just an awful guttural moaning. And like, there was this sudden realization that this is not normal. And thankfully, what I could do is I could turn his radio off, which, going back to later times, like when he sometimes used to annoy me on the radio, I got the radio guys to set it up so I could turn his radio off if he was talking too much. So I turned it off.
Like sort of to protect him?
Yeah, to protect him. Also the team, because the team could all hear it as well. And everybody was like, you know, what the fuck is going on here? And then it was literally like a couple of minutes later, Flavio Briatore come along the pit wall, and he had an image, a still image, and you could just see this black image. It was so blurry. And we thought it was a bird. And we were like, oh my God, he's had a bird strike, right? And then it started emerging that maybe something had come off Ruben's car, and then it came out that, you know, all of this is going on. Actually, it was the third spring off the rear suspension, 800 grams, a kilogram, something like that. There's a very famous image of when he gets out the car and his helmet is like completely destroyed down this left-hand side. And then he got taken to the medical centre. They sedated him, they give him a tracheotomy, like all of that type of stuff, and they airlifted him out. And we really had no idea, absolutely no idea. And then, like, me and like the performance engineer on his car were not really in any fit state to work. So they took us to the hospital, but there wasn't really a great deal you could do. You could just sit and wait, and he was being operated on.
We were told on the BBC, don't repeat this, please, to the public, but that his life is really in danger here. This is a life-threatening accident.
Yeah, it was. There's a military hospital in Budapest, and it has some of like the world's leading technology and doctors for head trauma. But on that Saturday night, it was, he's in theatre, and we don't really know whether he's going to make it.
My goodness.
Sorry. And then they put him in. They put him in an induced coma. And then I think by the Sunday night, things were, he was a lot more stable, but it was still, he's still kind of touch and go. I went to the track on the Sunday. Probably shouldn't have done because I wasn't very present. But I went there to support the team. And then he slowly started to emerge. And I think at that point, if you've been through stuff like that, I think your first, there's always a lot of noise about, will he ever get back in a car? And you're kind of like, well, that's not important right now, right? Is he, his wife was pregnant with little Felipe. And it's like, is he going to make it? Luca Di Montezemolo was the chairman of the team at the time, came over on the Sunday night, and then we spent the Sunday night in the hospital, and then the Monday, and it looked like, things were, he was more stable. He was critical but stable.
But you still couldn't have spoken to him after.
No. He was in an induced coma. So we flew back to Bologna, and then I went to work. Fairly difficult week at work, and then the following weekend, they flew me back out to Budapest. So I went in the room, and by that point we knew he was out of the coma and he was like recovering. And I went in the room, and it was quite shocking to the point that it was funny because his head was literally about twice the size of what it normally would be, and it was all black and blue.
Yeah.
Like literally his whole head was like black and blue. And he first started talking Portuguese to me. Then he didn't know I was. Then he thought he drove for McLaren. And then I think the next race was like in 2 weeks at that point, because it was the first of the summer break. So it was in 2 weeks. And then when he kind of worked out who I was and who he drove for, he kept saying to me, like, tell John I'll be back in the car. Or Stefano, I think Stefano was in charge at that point. Like, give Stefano a ring and tell him I'll be back in the car next week. I can come testing on Monday. I'm feeling a lot better now. We were like, okay. I remember like thinking to myself, like, I don't know whether I want to do this anymore.
Really?
It was quite an emotional time for me, and I just thought, I don't know whether I want to do it anymore because, just as I'd gone through with Mini, this is a guy that I'd got very close to. We had and still have like, almost like a family bond. Mm. And we're just at work doing our job. Do you want to be involved in something where that can happen? And, I come to the conclusion that I did want to do it. I wanted to carry on. And I'm glad I did, because I thoroughly enjoyed the remainder of my time in Formula One. And I was very clear with Ferrari as well. I said, I don't know whether I want to do it anymore.
I guess what you're saying is, as any parent does before their child is born, you've already given them your heart and your love, right? And that your heart was broken when your daughter passed away. You then give your heart and your love to the driver because you didn't have a normal driver-engineer relationship. And again, the fear was your heart could have been broken if you'd have lost Felipe, and this was just a price too much.
Yeah, totally. Like, why would, nothing's worth that, right? Yeah. And that was kind of how I approached it. I didn't really, I had to do a lot of soul searching to see whether or not this was a job. Like, you don't want to go to work with the chance that, you can lose a colleague. Of course, that's just can be life. Like, your colleague goes under a bus, but like, what's the heightened probability of this happening? well, you know, it's much higher in Formula One. And am I ready to accept that? You know, is it worth that? And I come to the conclusion that I did want to carry on, and it was important to me. And as much as it was important to me, I also knew that he would want to come back because I just know that the person that he is, and he did, and we carried on.